I was kind of thinking, what if Marie Laveau was my ancestor? And because that was my ancestor, I had like a gift or an ability, but also a pressure to live up to what she did for folks.
What's good? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, and this is Black and Published, bringing you the journeys of writers, poets, playwrights, and storytellers of all kinds. Today's guest is Diane Marie Brown, author of the novel Black Candle Women, a book Diane submitted to a contest in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd and the racial reckoning that forced publishers to diversify their rosters.
You talked about me having this story on my shelf for so long, but I know that's the case for so many people, and there are people that want to hear those stories. I think that's been a lie that's been told a lot, is that, there isn't an audience for all of these stories, a variety of stories, but there definitely is.
A public health professional by trade, Diane says she knew she always wanted to write, but didn't know it was even a possibility. The authors who helped her realize her voice and her stories mattered. Plus, the connection she found in her own Catholic upbringing that helped her craft a story about the Loa of voodoo and hoodoo magic. And the reason she felt guilty and ashamed of her stories as a child that made her timid to take risks on the page. That and more is next, when Black and Published continues. First question, Diane. When did you know that you were a writer?
Oh, wow. So that kind of happened probably over a couple of decades or so, when I was really, really young, probably about 7, 8, 9. My mom was a crafter, so she would make these, and a teacher. So she'd use like all of her recycled paper and make these little books, and she would give them to me, kind of like you'd buy a journal today, but she just had these handmade books with leftover fabric, and I would just write stories in them. But one day my mom was looking through them, and she said, why are all of your characters white? And I didn't have an answer, and I just felt very ashamed, and I'm like, I hadn't even thought of, that was, something that was problematic. And then it kind of hit me at the time. And so I just kind of stopped for a while. And then in middle school, I picked it up again, and I shared a story with one of my friends, and she took it home, and her mom read it and then brought it back and said, my mom said your book was really risque. I didn't even know what that meant.
In middle school?
In middle school. And I'm like, well, I probably had people hissing, or I don't know, who knows what I was saying, but I found a dictionary and looked up the word. And then again, I kind of just felt so embarrassed. So I stopped writing again. And then in high school, there was this assignment that we had to do. I don't know what the prompt was, but I wrote a story from the perspective of two different characters that went on a date, and they experienced the same date in two very different ways. And so I volunteered to have my story read in class. And then my teacher was like, well, since it's two different perspectives, why don't we have somebody read the guy and somebody read the woman? And the guy that read the male part, he was just very animated, and he made it a lot of fun. And I got a great reaction, and I just loved that reaction to a story that I wrote. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But that was right before I went to college. And when I thought about college, I thought about, I was an econ major, or you go, to be a teacher, or you go to be some kind of quote unquote professional. So I never thought about writing, that kind of being something that you do, that you go to college for. But when I was in college, I discovered Terry McMillan and read her books, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is something that I can do. And also Phoebe Moore Campbell and Eric Jerome Dickey. I discovered these kind of, at the time, contemporary Black writers who were writing just about just life and love and being, in Black settings. And I hadn't really seen that before with what I used to read when I was younger. And so that, I think, is when I was like, okay, well, maybe I've always liked to make up stories and write things, maybe I could really try this. So I think that's when I really felt that I wanted in some way to maybe write a book at some point.
So knowing from early on with some starts and stops that you wanted to write a book at some point, and then going to college to do a thing that was respectable and would pay bills.
Right. Yes.
You went on to work in public health. So then
yes.
How did you come back to your love for writing and the written word, even after falling in love with so many contemporary Black writers of the 90s and early 2000s?
And I was pretty naive about it when I was in my early 20s. I wrote like a few chapters and then I'm like, oh, I'm going to query this. I'm going to reach out to an agent. They'll love it. And, got, of course, no response. And so that's when I started kind of like saying, okay, well, maybe I need to learn how to write, and got some craft books. All the while I was starting in the world of public health, I was drawn to that because I was a young mom. I had my daughter my sophomore year in college when I was 19, and she had asthma and some other health issues, and just dealing with all of that stuff. I changed my major. I was sociology, but then after I graduated, I said, I want to go to public health school. And so I did that, all the while still having this, idea of, maybe I could write something, but not really focusing on it. So it wasn't until I had been working for many years in STD and HIV prevention. And this was, not early in the HIV/AIDS crisis, but, still not to kind of where we are today with treatment. And so it was passionate work and it fed me, but I wasn't using my creative side in any way. And so then I moved to a different job, and I would find ways to be creative in that job. So we would do like a fun video and I'd write a little story. I worked for the Long Beach Health Department, and they had their 100-year anniversary. And so I wrote a play. They wanted to celebrate it in some way. So I wrote and directed and produced a play using health department staff, and it's kind of the same thing. Like, I had an audience and everybody loved it. And then people started saying like, oh, wow, did you go to school for this? Do you have a degree in creative writing? And that's when I was like, I really do like this. And maybe it's something I need to take more seriously. So that's when I went back to grad school in fiction. I did a program. It's not quite an MFA. It was a master in professional writing. So we did fiction, we did screenwriting, we did writing for the stage, poetry, but my focus was fiction. So went back and got that degree.
And so then when you went back and got that master's in professional writing, was that when you first began to conceive of Black Candle Women? Was that like your thesis that you had to defend and anything like that?
Exactly. Yeah. It started just for one of my classes, a prompt. And I still, to this day, I can't remember what the exact prompt was, but I wrote just like the first 3 pages. And I really kind of liked what I did. I liked the characters. It wasn't all the characters that I have now, but it was a few characters. And I kind of liked where it was going. And so then I just kind of used that for other writing assignments while I was there. And that became my thesis. The first 100 pages was my thesis.
So then after having that first 100 pages as your thesis, when you came out of the program, how committed were you to finishing the book? Or was it complete at those 100 pages and then you had to revise?
I still need to do a lot of work. So I worked on it for another 6 to 8 months to finish it up, and then revised it a little bit, probably not as much as I should have, but did some revisions, and then started trying to find an agent. And there was an agent that I had worked with before the whole thing with writing the play, I had written another book and gotten an agent for it, but it was just kind of a very different type of book. The tone was a little different, but that never sold. And so I reached back out to her, and she just didn't feel that it connected. Same thing with other agents. So I kind of put it away for a little bit, for a few years. But I was always thinking about it. And I wrote some other things while I was kind of waiting around. But this story always spoke to me. And so I would just keep taking it out, thinking about what others said about it and revising it. I went through a couple of big revisions that I did on my own, because what agents were saying to me, it didn't really click. And so put it away. And then in 2019, I just started working on something completely different, kind of more the writing that I was doing before my writing program, which is maybe more of like rom-com or chick lit, kind of more in that vein. So kind of went back to a book that was more that type of style. And then comes 2020 and everything that happened in 2020, of course, with COVID. And then we have George Floyd and the Black Squares and organizations wanting to hear Black voices. And so a publishing house, Graydon House Books, did an open call the summer of 2020 for unagented Black fiction. I was like, well, I have a book that's just been sitting here. So let me send my query, because they said, no matter what, they would give feedback to anyone who meets the criteria and submits a query and sample pages. And so I was like, yeah, I'd like to get some more intense feedback no matter what. And they said, if they find something that they would like to purchase, then they would do that, and they'd help people find an agent. So there was an editor who reached out and said she wanted to read the entire manuscript, and I sent it to her, and then didn't hear anything for months. I think because they were giving feedback. I think they got close to 1,000 queries. And so it was not until maybe March of 2021 that I heard back from the editor, and she said they wanted to move forward with it, and they would help me find an agent. And they connected me with the agent who I have now, a Black woman who I probably would not have connected with any other way, just because she was closed to queries. She only would connect with new authors through conferences or referrals. And so it worked out, and it's been go since then.
Okay, so you gave us like the whole story, and I had to go back.
Okay.
So my first question is from that story is, how long was it between when you left your professional writing program at USC to when you submitted to the Graydon House contest in 2020? How many years was that?
That was 9 years. So
Black Candle Women has been sitting in a drawer in your office for 10 years, because it's 2023.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And you also have another manuscript like just sitting there too, just like
I
dust?
have a couple. I've written, I wrote a memoir. I've written I was just always still working on something. So, but yes, it's been a pretty long journey.
So then let's talk about the publishing process, because first of all, I've never met anybody who's won one of these open call publishing contests before. Like, I've seen it, I know it happens, and
Yes.
I think I've seen it on social media. I think a group I met, I think that I know someone who was maybe a finalist for the Gallery Books contest from Simon and Schuster, but you're my first author that I've spoken to who got in on that wave of good Black support in the wake of George Floyd's murder.
Yes.
And to have a book come out. So what has that process been like for you, knowing that you've had this book for a decade, basically, and it was on a whim? And I don't mean to want to make George Floyd's death sound like,
right.
I don't to sound less than it was, but
yes,
it was because of something so tragic that so many white industries looked at themselves and said, oh, we have to do better, and are now spreading that goodwill for something that was probably good enough 9 years ago?
I grappled with that for a while, I have to say. Even just feeling like guilt, or I don't know, just uneasiness, or just um it's just an interesting situation that got me to where I am. But I just had to let go of that at some point and just say, that wasn't anything that I had control over. And it's a terrible thing that happened, and it's unfortunate. But moving forward, this is at least a small agency that wants to try to do something better and to recognize that. So I think it just goes to show, opening up opportunities for creatives, for different voices, is so important and so valuable to the publishing industry. I also think it's important. I love that I have a Black agent. I would have loved to have known, when I was younger, that even though I like to write, but I didn't know about anything about the publishing industry. So having more Black editors and more Black publicists and more Black agents, I think, is super important and valuable, and would, again, help to find those Black voices or BIPOC voices, those who are creating content, and helping to see that there are so many stories. You talked about me having this story on my shelf for so long, but I know that's the case for so many people. And there are people that want to hear those stories. I think that's been a lie that's been told a lot, is that, there isn't an audience for all these stories, a variety of stories, but there definitely is.
I had a conversation with a person I shall not name, but who was saying that, all of these books were acquired by Black writers, own voices writers, LGBTQ writers, just all of these, diverse books were acquired in 2020. And now in 2022, because publishing moves so very slow, they're finally beginning to come out. And, all the support and verve that was behind them when they were being acquired has sort of fizzled in a way.
Sure.
And I know because COVID showed publishing that they don't have to spend on a book tour to make money and to sell books. Do you feel like you are being supported now as you're coming out with your novel to do everything that you can in your power to help sell this book that has been your dream for so long?
Yes, and it's kind of hard to say because I've never done this before. So I just know by comparing or hearing from other people, what kind of support they've gotten. And so at least I can say for my publisher, or my house within my publisher, I feel very supported. I feel that the marketing's been really good. I know that my publicists are doing a lot. I'm been sent to a couple of places already, in fact. And so I did a wonderful panel back in September that my publisher sent me to in New Orleans, where I got to meet some other fabulous writers and talk about my book. And so my experience has been that I'm still continued to be supported. And even have heard from other debut authors, all kinds of authors, not necessarily people of color or LGBTQ individuals. I feel that I've kind of heard that, oh wow, you're getting sent someplace and you're getting this and you're getting that. So based on that, I feel like I'm getting the support from my team.
Okay. So that's all my questions on the publishing process. Let's get into the book. Do you have it with you?
I do.
All right, can you read a little something from it, and then
Sure.
I can ask you all my questions about these women and their decisions? Ooh. Black Candle Women by Diane Marie Brown tells the story of 4 generations of Montrose women, all living under a curse, that the youngest among them is determined to not let rule or ruin her life. Here's Diane.
All right, this is from the perspective of Augusta, who is the matriarch of the family. Hearing about Nikki and the boy made Augusta think back to her 17-year-old self in Louisiana and how infinite life had seemed then. These days, it was difficult for Augusta to recall what she'd had for breakfast sometimes, or when her favorite TV shows aired. But those long ago days were clear, almost tangible. How adventurous and confident she'd been, and how boring and unimaginative she'd believed her mother to be. There was no reason, Augusta had felt, to go to college or supposedly culture herself with haughty books or piano lessons, only to become a miniature version of her mother. On misty summer evenings, she often slipped away from the coziness of her parents' home and headed down to the club in the quarter on Conti, the sound of hard bop filling her ears, jazz twisting itself in a swanky new way. She'd gone to the club, the Dewdrop Inn, for the first time with a man named Clarence, who was 7 years her senior and father to twin girls living with their mother in what was then the Iberville. He had a narrow gap between his front teeth, always on display with his roaring hyena laugh. She liked that he took her places, showed her off, but she didn't consider him attractive. After declining his many requests for blowjobs in the bathroom, he'd given up and left her high yellow ass, as he'd said, alone. But she'd returned to the club without him one night, bribing the stubby fellow at the door to let her in with the coins she'd lifted from her father's desk drawer. The second time without Clarence was when everything changed. It was a stormy night, the sky ripped to pieces by fingers of lightning and fists of thunder. As she entered the club, her eyes searching for a dark nook, a piece of wall to blend into, a fiery voice made her jump. "You alone tonight, pretty young girl?" Augusta looked around for the source. Wisps of stage light floated through the dusty air, carving out a face a few feet away. A woman moving toward her, with shiny eyes, penciled-in lips, and woolly long hair, long enough to swing on. She came close, too close, the mint of her breath not concealing the smoke on it. She didn't smell much different than the club, its walls soaked with nights of booze, cigars, and reefer. The woman drew near enough to kiss Augusta, and for an instant she thought the woman might do just that. But she laughed with tiny yellow teeth, then turned and beckoned for Augusta to follow. The brightness from the nearby coat check window revealed a silky red scarf and a chaotic print of spirals on her purple dress, a pairing that might have seemed odd on anyone else. But it was right on this woman. The red, a color Augusta eventually wore every day, for it brought love and energy, passion. Augusta trailed the woman out of fear as much as a bizarre attraction, a magnetism pulling her along. The door in the corner where the woman sat some nights, watching folks, opened to a narrow set of steps leading up to her workshop. Once upstairs, Augusta took off her damp jacket and sat down on a shop-worn chair as instructed. The room flickered, lit by a few hundred candles, it seemed, both tall and melted down to their roots. "Look at me," the woman said after introducing herself as Bellanova, and Augusta did. The tiny fires all around them reflecting off the shapely bottles lined up on shelves. The walls were dark, with painted pictures of Catholic saints and snakes and odd symbols, and what looked to be a shrine in one corner. The woman's eyes widened, her lids and eyelashes smeared with makeup, blues and smoky blacks. "You know why I called you here." She couldn't be sure if this was a question or a statement, the woman's inflection oddly placed in the middle of the sentence. When Bellanova raised one of her eyebrows and leaned in close, Augusta shook her head, no. The woman laughed. "Of course you do. You know why you're here. You just don't know that you know." The young Augusta gripped the side of the chair, still not averting her eyes from the woman. "You are Augusta Marie Laurent?" "Yes, I am." "I know you are." And the woman began speaking, foretelling. As she did, her hands kept busy, reaching out to touch Augusta's hair, then emptying a velvety bag onto the table, some sort of root, 3 dried-up peas, a playing card. She lit a candle without breaking her gaze from Augusta, poured oil over it from a tiny green bottle. She did these things naturally, effortlessly, the way that fingers that know how to play the piano don't hesitate. You weren't born to live your own life, Augusta Marie. The woman waved a crooked finger back and forth, close to Augusta's nose. Your life, like mine, belongs to the people. For the right price, yes. But doing work for people, our people, who deserve to get a splinter of happiness in this dreadful place we call a world. You hear? Your life will be dedicated to helping them. Against her judgment, she nodded. She could discern a sparkle of truth in the older woman's words, confirmation that what her mother desired for her was a future she'd not been intended to live. So you will come here. Stay with me. You'll be my student. And right then, she agreed to be Bellanova's apprentice. That choice, to learn from Bellanova both the religion of voodoo and the practice of hoodoo magic, all in the name of serving their people, was one she wished she could revisit. Not the part about helping others, but everything that happened because of it. Might she have done differently with her many decades of life now behind her? Perhaps. But of course, one of the first lessons she'd been taught by her mentor was that folks didn't really have choices, just their fates. Even if she hadn't said yes that night, she would have said yes someday.
Thank you. So before we get really into the context and the contents of the book, I have to ask, what was your research process like? Because voodoo is very secretive and hoodoo is usually like taught and handed down mother to daughter, family to family. So what was your research like coming from California?
My family is from Louisiana, and I spent my summers when I was younger, I spent my summers in New Orleans. So I do have that connection. My last name is Hebert, which nobody out here knows how to say, but everybody knows how to say it in Louisiana. But there is a woman named Denise Alvarado, and she wrote a book called The Voodoo Hoodoo Spell Book. And that book was really like the foundation for all of my research, and some stuff online as well. And then I also just found some articles from the 1950s and 60s describing New Orleans at the time. And so that was really my research process.
I really wanted to ask it because you dive deep into the spiritual practices of voodoo and, venerating the Loa and lifting them up, as well as including spells and mixtures and tinctures and stuff of the hoodoo side. So I wanted to know, was that part of your own upbringing outside from your research? Because I think you talk about in your acknowledgments, there was a book in your own family of like recipes and stories that kind of helped inspire this story for you.
Yes, my mom had a file or like a notebook filled with recipes. And I think she got them when we would spend our summers there, but maybe also from when she lived there or from my uncle. And she'd have little notes on them. And that just kind of gave me an idea of how we can keep information and pass it along. And we can learn little tidbits about our family, our grandparents, and even our parents, information that maybe they didn't share with us, just from little notes or drawings or things that they would write. But as far as everything else, I mean, I grew up Catholic, and so kind of the connection between the saints and the Loa, that kind of, I think, made things not easy, but I understand the similarities between Catholic saints and the Loa in voodoo, and just really wanted to make that connection. And then I just like to kind of be inspired, but then make things up on my own. So there are some things that I just made up as far as certain spells or tinctures or rituals. I just would maybe move things around or find some interesting ingredients that I thought would be fun to include. And so that's how I came up with some of the things in the book.
So you named the spells and everything on your own.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you're giving people like step-by-step directions here.
I thought about that. I'm like, oh, I hope people don't like try some of these things.
But as much as voodoo and hoodoo are grounding central forces in the novel itself and in the book that the main characters have, it's what I guess I'm not spoiling it. They're cursed. They're cursed.
Yes.
So that's not a spoiler.
Right.
They're cursed, and it's introduced very early, and so they're all trying to maneuver their lives in some way around this curse. But you set it up in the prologue when you say, and was Augusta's point of view. She'd learned early on about a certain unfairness in life. Some folks struggled disproportionately, carrying things that others couldn't even lift. The Montrose women had taken on an overbalance of grief, but the way Augusta saw it, they'd been given what they were owed. And I was like, "Who? How are you owed grief? I don't understand." But why was it that was the emotion that you wanted your characters to always be, I guess, struggling against, especially because there's 4 generations of women in this story?
Mm-hmm. Right. I think I was thinking that it's this family because of who they're related to. There's a fictional woman, Loa, named Lenora, similar to, I guess, Marie Laveau. But I was kind of thinking, what if Marie Laveau was my ancestor? And because that was my ancestor, I had like a gift or an ability, but also a pressure to live up to what she did for folks. That's kind of what I wanted to do with creating Lenora. And so I think it really was this pressure from an ancestor from many years ago to help people, to assist people, and their lives really being meant for that, even if it meant that they didn't get to have love or they had to sacrifice. And so that was kind of the pressure that I wanted to put on this family and these characters.
And even in the section that you read, at the end of it, this is on page 39, you say, folks didn't really have choices, just their fates. Do you believe that every choice we make is toward a predetermined fate? Because that's certainly how your characters believe.
I don't know. I go back and forth on this because, maybe our choices that we make is still our fate. Does that make sense? Like, we have our fate. This is how our destinies are supposed to go, or the directions our lives are supposed to go. But perhaps the choices that we make, that we feel that we're controlling, that was ultimately part of our fate anyways. So I don't know. I go back and forth, but I don't want to think that, we just have this predetermined route for our life and there's no veering off and we have no control over it. So I don't like to think that way either. So I do want to think that we have choices.
Okay, so then why did you have it set in the choice of the youngest character, or the youngest woman in the book, that she would be the one to restore her family?
Well, I have a teen, well, not anymore. She just turned 20. So I still think of her as a teenager. But I've always found it interesting, even from when I first started writing this, and my other daughters were teenagers when I was writing this. And I'm sure I did the same thing. I know I did the same thing. Just my children not wanting to, I guess, believe in the same things that I believe, or take the path that I might have envisioned from them, and them sometimes just really bucking against the way that I live and our family lives or has lived. And I think that's important. Maybe I had visions or ideals for my children and they don't want any of that. And I have to always step back and say, it's their life. It's not my life. Just like I lived the life that I wanted to live. I'm a lot like my mom in many ways. I'm very different in many ways. I've gotten a lot of great things from her, but I think differently and I behave differently. And so I kind of wanted Nikki to kind of have that attitude and opinion and really just say, you all have lived this way for many, many years, but I don't I don't want to keep living in the way that you all have been living. And so, yeah, as I think young people definitely have a great ability to do that. And I think it's so valuable and so important for young people to stand for what they believe in and what they want.
And each woman in the book recognizes bits and pieces of themselves in Nikki when they were her age and reflect on that. And it's especially the reflections of her mother. She was the most insufferable woman. Oh my gosh, she worked my nerves so bad. I was like, lady. But she finally gets it together. And so on page 314, you have a line from her that says, because she's a therapist, all the clients she'd ushered through their life's challenges, yet she couldn't fix her own family's troubles. Were you having fun writing the mother as like this strict, overbearing helicopter parent who like couldn't see the forest for the trees like right in front of her own face?
Yeah.
Like, woo, this lady is on my nerve.
Well, especially that she's a therapist, right?
Yes.
So she should get it. She should see in herself, what if she saw it in somebody else, she would call them out on it, right? Or you would think she would if she's a good therapist. But yeah, I wanted to see that kind of irony in her as a character.
So this is a book that I think mothers and daughters could read together. What kind of conversations would you want to come out of that after they would read it separately and then reconvene to discuss? Because I know you have your book club questions in the back as well.
Oh yeah, I think that's an awesome idea for mothers and daughters to read together. And as I said, I have all girls. I have 4 daughters, and I think that also was one of the reasons why I wrote a book about a family of women. And really, kind of as I mentioned before, I want women to be strong, young women to be strong. I want them to speak up respectfully to their parents, but I want them to, maybe sometimes call their parents out on things or offer different opinions or different approaches in how you deal with problems. And also that just, how do families deal with challenges? How do you deal with things that come up that affect your family? How do we work through these things? And so I think those would be great discussions. I would love to be inspired after reading this book for women.
What do you want readers to take from your novel?
Well, you touch on it a little bit with the whole destiny and fate idea, and people really, I think, realizing their gifts that are valuable and that can be of service to others. I hope that the book will make people, hopefully some of the characters will make people laugh. I want people to have some enjoyment and see something fun in it, and really to escape for a little bit, to find a story about another family, see how somebody else lives, get a glimpse into another household. I always think that's so interesting and fun. So kind of a way to do that as well, to inhabit somebody else's life for a little bit.
And what is next for you? I mean, you got your debut novel out. You say you've got memoirs and other novels sitting in the drawer. What's next?
So, yeah, I definitely want to keep writing. I have a book that I started. I was going to kind of go back to one of my older books, the one that I had been working on in 2019. But I started writing something during NaNoWriMo this year. Just the first day, I just got an idea and it's just moving. And so I'm not that far into it, but it's more, I think, connected to Black Candle women. There are some similarities in themes and just the type of novel that I hope it will be. And so that's what I'm kind of working on right now.
Awesome. So I want to move to a speed round in the game, and then I will let you go for the afternoon.
Okay.
What is your favorite book?
Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston.
Who is your favorite author?
Probably Zora Neale Hurston or Alice Walker.
Who is your favorite artist?
I will say Janet Jackson.
Yay! I'm sorry, she's my favorite, and I'm going to the concert.
Me too.
We go together. What's your favorite TV show?
Top Chef or Parks and Rec.
It's fine with me. I love Bobby Flay. Your favorite show is your favorite show. If Black Candle Women were to get the movie adaptation, who would you want to play your characters?
Oh, I've thought about this just because I've been doing some interviews. I really like Danielle Deadweiler for Victoria. She was on Until. I like Janelle Monáe for Willow.
I see it.
For Augusta, I like Felicia Rashad.
I see it. I see it.
And
I see it.
For Nikki, there's an actress named Casey Wallfall. She was the lead for the show Naomi, but also Sky Jackson for Nikki. And then probably the person that I really love, even though she's not one of the point of view characters in the book, Madeline. Jasmine Guy. I don't know if she's old enough, but Jasmine Guy, I think I really like her for that.
Oh, that would be awesome. Somebody got to make this movie. You just got, you have your cast list right there. I see it. Same vein, what do you think is the best book to movie adaptation?
My favorite is Misery.
If you had the power to perform a hoodoo spell on someone, what kind of spell would you do?
Oh, probably a spell that would make people tell the truth.
Okay. And then what's a recipe that you're very famous for?
Shrimp and grits.
Ooh, I need to come to your house. That sounds amazing. So the game is called Rewriting the Classics. We'll see how far we get. Name one book you wish you would have written.
Kindred?
Name one book where you want to change the ending, and how would you do it?
So one of my favorite books is Middlesex by Jeffrey, I don't know how to say it, Eugenides. And the father, Lefty, dies before he finds out some important information about his child. And so I wish he would have not died and learned about his child.
Okay.
Information about his child.
And then my messy question, name a book. I'm telling you, it's messy. Name a book that you think is overrated or overtaught, and why?
Yes, messy. Oh, The Great Gatsby. And more because that book is not about Gatsby. It's about Nick. Nick is the protagonist. And the way that it's taught or why it's hyped up, I think, is because all this focus is on Gatsby, and Nick, the narrator, he's the one who's disillusioned at the end. It's real. He makes the change. And so I don't think it's taught correctly. And that's why it's overrated. Maybe.
That book has come up a couple of times when I've asked that question for different reasons. That's a new reason. All right. So my final question for you today, Diane. When you are dead and gone and among the ancestors or the Loa, what would you like someone to write about the legacy of words and work that you left behind?
Hopefully that my writing helped people escape and made them laugh.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great talking with you.
Big thank you to Diane Marie Brown for being here today on Black and Published. Make sure you check out Diane's debut novel, Black Candle Women, out now from Graydon House Books. And if you're not following Diane, follow her on the socials. She's at Writer Die Chick on Twitter, and writer is WriterDieChick. DI Chick on Twitter, and Diane_Marie_Brown on Instagram. That's our show for the week. If you like this episode and want more Black and Published, head to our Instagram page. It's at Black and Published, and that's BLK and Published. There, I've posted a bonus clip from my interview with Diane about the time she wanted to give up on her dream while her manuscript was collecting dust. Make sure you check it out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll holler at y'all next week when our guest will be Sophronia Scott, author of the novel Wild, Beautiful, and Free.
In June of 2011, one of my sisters died. And I was grieving, and I said, this has to stop. I finally applied for and got into the MFA program at Vermont College of Fine Arts. And I learned how to drive a school bus. I was a substitute school bus driver for a year, but I was serious. I don't play. It's like, this is going to happen. I need to be writing my work.
That's next week on Black and Published. I'll talk to you then. Peace.